There's a lot of bullshit going on right now as far as gold and silver goes. And a lot of people are saying silver is the second coming. And silver is signaling that, the system is going to collapse. Banks are collapsing. Everyone's collapsing. Silver is going to take over the world. Silver is, the best thing that's ever been created. Now, I want to just give my thoughts on this, why I think gold and silver are trash, and why Bitcoin is truth, and what I think is going to happen to gold and silver prices as we go into this coming week. So, firstly, I hope you had a Merry Christmas. I certainly had an amazing time with friends and family. It was a really great time to be celebrating. And of course, here in Dubai, it's awesome. They've got Christmas everywhere, and it was a fun time. Now, let's talk about gold and silver in particular, because when I was in the gold and silver space, I gave almost a decade of my life to the gold and silver space. And I don't think there's anything fundamentally wrong with gold and silver as investments. I think that as a Bitcoiner, we kind of have the same thesis. The thesis is there is unlimited money printing going on. There is completely uncontrolled levels of money printing going on, and we want scarce assets. And so therefore, before I kind of discovered Bitcoin and understood what Bitcoin was, I was a gold and silver investor because I believed in the fact that scarcity was extremely important. And so I want to preface this video with the fact that I don't think gold and silver are fundamentally bad thinking investments, right? I think if you have a thought process of, okay, all of this money printing is going crazy, I need to protect my value, I'm going to buy gold because it's scarce. I get the logic of that. I understand the logic of that. What I am violently allergic to in the gold and silver space, and ultimately what caused me to leave the gold and silver space, is the doom and gloom boomerism that happens. The fact that everything is going to collapse every time gold and silver tries to make a run for it. And I think that's a very negative way to look at the world. You want to look at the world from the perspective that you're going to do really well. Your family's going to do really well. The world is doing really well. The people around you are doing really well. The community is doing really well. And the team that you have around you is doing really well. And I think gold and silver are garbage. Now, I can tell you as an investor, even though we have the same thesis, I believe that Bitcoin is a much more superior asset for the thesis than gold and silver. Why is that? Because it's actually provably scarce. It is actually finite with actual provable mathematics to show that it's actually finite. Gold and silver is not that. I'll tell you a funny story. When I left the gold and silver space, told all my friends that I'm leaving the gold and silver space, sold all my gold and silver in 2020 and put it into Bitcoin at roughly $5,000 a coin. So yeah, you don't have to cry for me where now that gold is running up to 4,400, 4,500, whatever it is, and silver is hitting 82, right? You don't have to worry because it's 20x from 5,000. So when I said, when they told me I was crazy, cussed me out and everything else, my answer to my question to them really was, if you can tell me exactly how many gold ounces and silver ounces were dug up from the ground yesterday, I will put 50% of my net worth back into gold and silver instantly. And of course, nobody can answer the question because nobody actually knows how many gold and silver ounces are dug up. Nobody knows gold and silver. Any country could be digging up gold and silver in a mine that nobody knows about, shoving it into their, into their treasury. Nobody knows any of this. Whereas with Bitcoin, you can actually prove this. It is actually provably scarce. And that's extremely valuable to me. Now, when it comes to the gold and silver markets, what happens every time, this has happened in 2011, kind of like the last couple of years that I was in the gold and silver space, actively, price starts to run and everyone starts talking about that everything's going to collapse. JP Morgan has a short, we can defund the banks, we can do it, blah, 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 all this other bullshit, right? It's never true, it never happens. The bigger reason why I don't like gold and silver fundamentally is it doesn't protect any value. Right? A lot of people think it protects value, and at its peaks, yes, it looks like it protects value, right? But it doesn't, because what you've got to do is you've got to be smart, and you've got to not look at the price of the asset in the dollar value. You've got to look at it in the M2SL value, which is the money stock value, right? How much money has been printed and does it keep up with it? And if you can do this on TradingView, just go to TradingView, do gold slash M2SL, hit enter, and it will show you exactly whether gold has kept up with the amount of money printing or not. And funnily enough, since 2011, gold just by making a new high, just brought and caught up with its 2011 value of the amount of money that's been printed. That's because so much debasement has happened. And as far as silver goes, silver hasn't even caught up to its 2011 high in terms of how much total money, total currency, total dollars there are in the world. So silver is utter garbage. And by the way, I want to say, there is only one time in history prior to right now that a gram of silver or an ounce of silver has been worth more than a barrel of oil, right? It's only one time in history. And everyone always says, you know, here's a conspiracy. Let's talk a little bit of conspiracy, a little bit, just a little bit of conspiracy. Everyone always talks about the fact that, you know, all these other central banks smarter than the US. And I hear Americans say this the most, which is kind of crazy, right? You're trying to basically say everyone, you know, the American government is, and the long arm of American finance is not good at protecting the US dollar. It's kind of crazy to me. But anyway, if other central banks were stacking gold and stacking silver, which by the way, China's already made this mistake once, right? When they moved to a silver standard, the rest of the world was forced onto a gold standard. And then China was set back. So now let's talk about, you know, if a country was, just a little bit of conspiracy, okay? Just allow me a little bit. If a country was using gold and silver to destabilize the United States dollar, I guarantee that every branch of military and government would be focused on reducing gold to shit to protect the US dollar, right? It's a game of incentives. You're not just going to get away with it. US is not going to say, oh, you got gold, oh shit. Oh shit, guys, forget it, it's over. They got enough gold. It's over, guys. Forget about it. Yeah, we lost the empire. They just accumulated enough gold. That's not going to happen. That's why I think the world is being moved onto Bitcoin and US dollar stablecoins. That's what is going on here because all these other central banks are accumulating gold and accumulating gold at a record pace. Now, this kind of always happens periodically where central banks buy a bunch of gold and buy a bunch of silver, maybe, right? But gold for sure. And so what's the bigger game that's being played here is the US is figuring out what the next stage of this game is. And the next stage of this game is US dollar stable coins, so we can rug all central banks around the world and send US dollars directly to the people, shore up our treasuries, and then Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is, you know, the US has basically got the biggest Bitcoin stack itself and also the amount of Bitcoin that's controlled within its jurisdiction. So Bitcoin is going to be the future here. Now, when it comes to silver and what's going on in the markets, everyone's saying silver's, I don't know where it's going to stop. Silver's going to $400. I've heard this whole shit over and over again, and it happens every single time. And here's what I think is going to happen. So I think a couple weeks ago we saw the CME start to raise margin requirements on silver. That's going to continue, right? If the price keeps running, remember, silver is an industrial metal. So all of these companies in the US, everyone is going to need silver to do things with, right? So it has to be controlled to a certain extent. And they have market tools, right? And everyone's going to call it manipulation, right? But they have market tools to make this happen. And the beautiful thing about gold and silver is that as the price gets high enough, people are now incentivized to go find silver and gold, whether it's existing sources or new sources, and dump it onto the market. And then as the mining catches up, I think the Silver Institute's own data, I haven't looked at this in a while, but Silver Institute's own data says that, you know, if the price breaches $50 an ounce, I think you can take the stock to flow of silver from 15 years down to 3 years, right? Somebody can fact check me on that. But the point is this, the supply is easy to increase on the metals. Obviously, in acute periods like what we're seeing right now, you're going to see a price move. But that's why Bitcoin is better, because you've actually got provable scarcity. So here's what I think is going to happen. I simply think market function is going to work really well. I think that different market tools are going to come into play, and I think that silver is going to be brought down because it is an industrial metal. It has to be cheaper it's got to be cheaper than oil, right? It's never happened before in history, actually once, like I said, but it's not going to keep happening. So I reckon what's going to happen as we go into this week is that certain announcements are going to be made. Silver is going to be brought down in price. And I wouldn't be surprised, because nothing moves like this, right? Nothing. The reason why Bitcoin has its parabolic moves and then crashes is because it has its parabolic moves. And this is a parabolic move when it comes to silver. And not gold really right now, but when it comes to silver, it's had a parabolic move. And so I wouldn't be surprised if silver drops by 50% very quickly, right? I would not be surprised at all. Could it go up from here? Maybe, right? My prediction I put out on the 14th of October is I think silver tops out somewhere in the 60s. It's obviously gone way more than that. This kind of move is unprecedented. And of course, all the doom and gloom boomers are out there saying, you know, what they normally say, which is everything's going to collapse and whatever else. I don't believe that's going to happen. I think we're going to see silver come crashing down. Silver is garbage from the thesis that I look at silver, right? It's obviously not garbage if you're using it as an industrial metal, et cetera, et cetera. It's very useful. But from my thesis of there's an unlimited amount of money being printed, it has to be controlled, we need a scarce asset, Bitcoin still wins and Bitcoin will keep winning. And in the interim, I think what's going to happen is doom and gloom boomers are going to have their once every 15 years. By the way, since the 2011 high, people have had to wait 14 years for a 70-ish% return at 82 bucks. 82 bucks an ounce, right? 14 fucking years for 71% in silver. And that's if you bought from high to high, right? Of course. So I don't think this is going to last. And by the way, this is not a gold and silver only thing, because everything's rallying, right? You got copper rallying, platinum rallying, everything is rallying. All the metals are rallying. Someone said to me that there was potentially that this is a signal that the business cycle is ending, it's ending. And so we could see a turn up in the business cycle once this turns over. But the main point that I want to highlight here is silver is garbage for the thesis that I and you, if you're watching this video, are looking at it, which is there's an unlimited amount of money printing and we've got to protect our value. Gold is also garbage. It's better than silver, but it's garbage because it hasn't protected any value when you look at it on the M2SL chart. And I want to highlight that you've got to be very careful right now if you're investing in silver. More importantly, I've seen a lot of Twitter spaces and, you know, you see all this bullshit, like, and I've dealt with this a decade ago, right? More than a decade ago, which is, oh, SLV, the silver ETF is rehypothecating. I had a doom and gloom boomer come on the Twitter spaces, had to destroy them. It took me 3 minutes to take them out completely because I said, okay, so where in the prospectus does it say that they rehypothecate? Right? And they're like, I'm sure it does. It's like, no, it doesn't. And any moron right now can download the prospectus of SLV, download the prospectus of GLD, and put it into, you don't even need a genius to tell you. You got the genius in your phone. Put the PDF into ChatGPT and ask it any questions that these doom and gloom boomers are out here sprouting, and you'll see that it's complete and utter horseshit. Complete and utter bullshit, right? They do this every single time, and you know, frankly, it's been quite disappointing because it only took a 36% dip in Bitcoin and a small rally in gold and silver after 14 fucking years. And we evidenced how many turncoats there are in Bitcoin. Because the reality is, if they've now switched from Bitcoin to gold and silver, they weren't Bitcoiners. And I hope that you are smart enough to realize who the real Bitcoiners are, who the people that are sticking with conviction on Bitcoin, not jumping onto. These people were saying for months, for years in fact, I'm accumulating Bitcoin. Bitcoin's better than gold. Bitcoin's better than gold. A little rally happens in gold and silver, and suddenly they were all stacking silver for this long. It's all bullshit. I don't know who's telling the truth. You don't know, right? You don't know what's in people's portfolios. It is what it is. But gold and silver, from the thesis that I look at it, for the reason why I'm investing, why I pivoted from gold and silver into Bitcoin, gold and silver are garbage. Bitcoin is a better asset. Gold, I can kind of like, okay, I can get my head around why you want to have some gold in your portfolio if you're, if that's how you want to move. Silver is utter garbage, and I wouldn't be surprised if silver knocks off 50% in a very short period of time. The market makers are going to get involved here, and you're going to see silver get controlled like a dog. And I just hope that people are not out here selling their Bitcoin at what could be, a mid-cycle low here and pivoting into silver at a 14-year all-time high. I hope that's not the case, because ultimately there's always only 3 rules to Bitcoin. Step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy.